Well, folks, you have wanted him back on. One of my favorite people, Monty Mulkey, is back for an incredible show. And this teaching, so many people requested I have Monty give this talk. It's just incredible. And I'm really looking forward to it. So I'd like to welcome back to the program Pastor Monty Mulkey from West Coast Church of Deliverance. Monty, welcome back to the program, sir.
Thank you, Sheila. This is a message that I'm going to be putting to series that we've already done concerning alcoholic patterns of rage and violence. And I'm often called upon for counsel in marriage relationships that aren't doing well. And over, one area that is so common, one of the most common enemies to marriages, deals in the topic of alcohol, but especially living with alcoholic rage. And so today we're going to speak about spirits of rage, living with an angry person, the siblings of the rage, such as violence and control. Proverbs 20, verse 1 reads, "Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise." Now, there's many things we can pull out of that verse and talk on, but sooner or later, if people drink or drugs, but primarily looking at the alcohol today, the anger increases, the rage, violence attacks, and abuse begins to start. Now, I hope to approach this from two different perspectives. Number one, if you're married to a person that's that way. And number two, if you are the one with the alcoholic rage. So both people need some help. And I encourage you to order the rest of our series on dealing with alcohol, dealing with spirits of anger, control, intermittent explosive disorders. That was another good one on anger. Isaiah 5:11. Let's look at some of the different attributes that Scripture shows us what comes with alcohol. Isaiah 5:11 reads, "Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflames them. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, men of strength to mingle strong drink." Now, it used to be that alcohol was only consumed maybe on the weekends, a Friday night, a Saturday night, and it has increased now where they're tipping a little wine for the stomach's sake early in the morning every day of the week. And it's amazing how many Christians are caught up in just one verse that says, well, a little wine for the stomach's sake. And they said, yeah, if you're dying, you can go ahead and have it because you're going to be dead before the spirits actually take root. But if you want a good life, stay away from alcohol. There's just nothing good that's in it. I don't even cook with it. People say, oh, it all burns off. Well, maybe so, but I'm not going to give any ground to the devil to come against me. Isaiah shows us that wine inflames. You may say, well, I don't have a problem with it. I can drink a little glass and it won't hurt me. Well, maybe today, but you don't know when it will become something much more severe, because the demons that run with alcohol work little by little till they bring in their destruction. But we see two things here. We're seeing the rage, the anger, the inflaming of the heart, which can be taken in multiple ways, but lust for one. It fragments the soul. Hosea 4:11 reads, "Whoredom and wine, new wine, take away the heart." One reason why there's marriage issues and why they can't be along or lack intimacy is that the heart has been lost through alcohol. Proverbs 23:29 reads, "Who hath woe? Who hath sorrows? Who hath contentions? Who hath babblings? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes?" People that think it's okay to have a glass of wine with their evening meal should read this. Okay, before you pour my wine, I want a little more woe, sorrow, contention, babbling, red eyes, meaning the blood vessels in your eyes are going to dilate and burst, as well as your nose. And it says, "They that tarry long at the wine." Well, I'm just going to have one glass. Yeah, tonight, tomorrow night, the next night. And tarrying long means a lifelong habit of it comes in. Verse 32 says, "At the last it bites like a serpent," meaning you're not in one glass of wine for supper tonight, get bitten, but sooner or later you will get bit by the serpent. And it stings like an adder. Your eyes shall behold strange women, and your heart shall utter perverse things. So depression, contentions. The alcoholic often sees everybody and everything as against them. Now, I've had people say, Pastor, he wasn't this way when we got married. I said, well, he was really sensitive and loving and kind and gentle. I said, yeah, but the more he drank, those party spirits just kick in, and pretty soon he's in full-blown manifestation of it. Habakkuk 2:5 gives us a great illustration of alcohol spirits. It says, yea, also, because he transgresses by wine, he is a proud man. Taking that little sip for your stomach's sake can open the door for the spirit of pride. Alcoholic tends to be very proudful, a boaster. They can do it all better than anybody else, of course. Neither keepeth at home. Now, here we see the destruction of the home life. They become vagabonds. They're not stable. They don't like working for their boss or their company, and so they're always waiting for their financial ship to come in, and they're going to launch out on their own, self-employed, and yet they can't get along with anybody. It says, who enlarges his desire as hell. That shows us lust, never satisfied, selfish, as death, spirits of death, destruction, cruelty, abusive spirits, violent spirits, persisting in alcohol. One by one, these spirits all come in. It says, and cannot be satisfied. The alcoholic lacks self-restraint, self-control, a disciplined spirit. We also see greed, covetousness. Alcoholic is never satisfied or is continually buying toys. Married with 2 or 3 children, still keeps the monster truck that he drove in college for the family car. The alcoholic repeatedly goes into debt to buy more of these toys, and he finds himself in a vicious circle, spirals downward, leads to poverty, divorce, and ill health. There comes a time when you have to grow up and quit living like a child. 1 Corinthians 13:11 reads, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Alcoholic is so often told to grow up, but of course, they find that impossible without deliverance. In Habakkuk, it goes on. He says, gathers unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. The alcoholic becomes a master at controlling people or taking prisoners of war. They're a master manipulator, charmer, controlling, never praises or gives recognition to family, and he keeps the family on a constant stress level, living in chaos. They become users of people. The whole pattern of arrested development, and we have a series on that as well that you can order. This is another pattern that goes along with the alcoholic syndrome, because the alcoholic is usually like a young child inside, as we pointed out. Their life simply revolves around themselves, me, myself, and I. If you ever confront, then you may find out you'll run into self-pity takes over when things don't go their way. They pout, throw a temper tantrum fit, because the mind, the will, and the emotions being damaged, they never develop into a mature adult life. Patterns of shame, rejection, destruction become a way of life for the entire family. Isaiah 28:7. We see another fruit that alcohol does is that one, it poisons your body. Your body's not made to carry that. And from the very first time you take any of it, ingest into your mouth, it begins to kill brain cells. It damages the mind and brings death into the brain cells of your mind. Isaiah 28:7 says, they have erred through wine, and through strong drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of the wine. And if you think that you're the one swallowing the wine, it's going to turn around the other way. The wine is going to swallow you. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. So as this stronghold takes root in a person's life, they begin to make bad judgment, bad business, bad financial deals. As I said, they can't work for anybody else. They're never stable, moving from job to job, can't settle down, always moving. They're bored, excuses one after another, and alcoholic rage begins to set in. One reason, major reason the rage comes in is because of the damage it does to the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Living with the alcoholic rage, at last, when it bites like a serpent, at last, when this kingdom takes root, then repeated episodes of aggression, violent behavior begins to work in the marriage life of the alcoholic toward his family, wife, and kids. People with this rage, or you could call it intermittent explosive disorder, attack others, their possession. They cause bodily injury, property damage. At first, it may start out as verbal abuse, but then it begins to where they start destroying things. And even afterwards, and the demons love to do this to the people, and why an alcoholic has so much shame is once the manifestation is done, they allow the person to come a little bit back to the surface, and they go, wow, I did all that. And so the violent behavior turns into remorse, regret, shame, embarrassment. The alcoholic family of demons turns to fighting or warring. And I feel so sad for the family, the wife and kids, because there's never any peace in the house. And some of you grew up in an alcoholic home. There's always fighting and warring. The alcoholic develops a combative character, aggressive, militant, and they begin to lose impulse control. Actually, the Medical Society lists it as a disorder. Lack of having impulse control spreads to kleptomania, pyromania, pathological gambling. These are the continued destruction that comes in. Sometimes they call it intermittent explosive disorder, a behavioral disorder characterized by extreme expression of anger to the point of uncontrollable rage, disproportionate to the circumstances at hand. Honey, I'm going to go out, have a cup of coffee with the girls. You're what? And it just blows up over nothing. We talked about it last night, and he can't remember, of course, because he doesn't have his brain anymore. And just because they were kind, sensitive when you started out, remember, these kind of people love to party. The party starts, and that kind, sensitive, loving person begins to slowly change into a raging, violent control freak. Alcoholic rage, often associated with lesions in the prefrontal cortex, with damage to these areas, including to the amygdala, increase in the incidence of impulsive and aggressive behavior, and the ability to predict the outcomes of an individual's own action. They cannot see cause and effect, that if they do this, this is going to happen. So I always tell people, choose wisely your relationships if it's not too late. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. What fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? Proverbs 22:24 says, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. If you're dating somebody and they have an angry issue, they are not marriage material. Until they get healing and deliverance, no matter how funny they can be, how loving and giving and all of that, usually they're doing that out of their guilt and shame because of their anger problem. Run away. They are not marriage material. Send them to a deliverance church for 3 years and we'll go to work on it. And maybe they may become marriage material one day, but Scripture has given us so much warning about watching out for people that are angry. Sharon did a great series on the psychopath. These are all things that you need to learn to be able to identify so you have the ability to judge character. Definition of anger, let's consider this. There's at least 8 Hebrew words used to describe anger and 2 Greek words to express the concept of anger or rage in the Scripture. Anger comes from the Hebrew word nose, N-O-S-E, and it's thought to be of the seed of anger because of hard breathing. Other words for this kind of anger is foam, indignation, rage, heat, fury, to burn, grief, vexation, breaking forth of wrath. So these spirits take root and it grows to that. 1, as the demons get inside a person, and 2, as they create physical damage to the brain. Now, you could get the same damage by playing football or boxing or any of the sports that they do in high school and college. If you get hit on the head, it will do the same thing and you'll develop anger problems, and that's going to require healing. The alcoholic is just doing it through liquids. He's doing the same thing to his brain. So in Scripture, we see anger divided into 2 groups, the inward emotion and the outward manifestation. And we also learn from Scripture that uncontrolled anger brings a curse from God. In fact, it was one of the first sins among mankind with anger. In Genesis 4, verse 4, curse came because of the manifestation of wrath. This reads, Abel, He also brought of the firstlings of the flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel to his offering, but unto Cain to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth. His countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. Unto thee shall be his desire, thou shalt rule over him. Here we have another one on control. Further on, Genesis 49:6 reads, O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly, mine honor. Be not thou united, for in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So there's a curse from God toward wrath, fierceness, cruelty. We did a 2-part series on the curse that comes with cruelty, and the alcoholic demons are cruel. Let's consider some consequences of not dealing with it. If you're listening to the message today and you're having some relationship issues, or maybe you're just doing a little glass of wine for your stomach's sake, you'll never know when this can become a major problem. Consider the problems that alcoholic rage and alcohol produces. One, alcohol is a destruction principality, and it slowly works, and it will work to destroy your marriage, your career, your health, and it destroys your brain. It brings brain damage. You'll develop physical brain trauma. Other things associated with it that we found through deliverance is attention deficit, ADD, bipolar. If you've been around bipolar people, they are always angry, always fighting, accident prone, and primarily because alcohol begins to destroy brain cells in the prefrontal cortex and then also the temporal lobes. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that watches, supervises, guides, directs, and focuses your behavior, where you develop the capacity for internal supervision so you can control your outbursts. And when you begin to damage that part, or even if you got hit really hard there, get a concussion or get hit on the front of your head, you can develop these problems. The alcoholic will, it's just a matter of time. If you have poor prefrontal cortex, you are more likely to do something to make your situations worse, because the prefrontal cortex helps keep you on task and it allows you to stay with a project or complete something. Alcoholic grows to a point where they never finish what they start out. The prefrontal cortex gives the ability to think through to the consequences of your behavior. It causes conflict seeking. The alcoholic develops games of, let's have a problem. This is so exciting. And so, because they feel that their brain starts to wake up when they begin to verbally abuse, tease, etc. Damage to the prefrontal cortex brings distractibility, impulse control problems. They do things they regret, and they have lots of misperceptions. It damages as well the temporal lobes. If we look into memory and temper, the 2 lobes on the side of your head, each one differs a little function and different, but temporal lobes play an integral part in memory, emotional stability, learning, and socialization, playing well with others. And so if people continue to drink, it begins to damage the temporal lobes. In the same way, if you get hit on the side of the head repeatedly, it begins to destroy brain cells there. Some of the good news is that God can grow a new brain. If He can raise a dead person back to life, He can also raise a dead brain cell back to life. The temporal lobe is the store of all the precious treasures that make up the sense of personal identity, and it's where your sense of connectedness to people around you comes from. Temporal lobes help us process sight and sound and gives us the language of life. This is where slurred speech and inability to talk and communicate, as your temporal lobes start getting destroyed, those start going. Strong feelings of conviction, great insight, the ability to know truth, these are the attributes of the temporal lobes. The temporal lobes are extremely vulnerable due to the physical placement in the head. They tend to get hit repeatedly with accidents and things. Some more consequence of not dealing with alcohol spirits: it will cause you to sin, it brings the displeasure of God, and it begets more anger, as well as affecting your health. And it makes no difference whether anger is expressed or suppressed. For a while, the alcohol maybe just, the anger comes out only in words, or they just run off to their cave and fit and fume and have another beer. Well, sooner or later, that suppressed anger has effects upon their stomach, and it begins to eat up the lining of the stomach. Ulcers are very common with alcoholics, as well as sugar diabetes and other things, because alcohol really is a simple sugar that breaks down quite often. They used to have a saying years ago: candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. And it's because it is just pure, unadulterated sugar goes right to your system. And so that's why alcoholics develop a beer gut, because it's an enormous amount of sugar. Many of them, maybe they'll quit drinking the beer, but they just take on mass amounts of sugar. And so in helping somebody get free, they have to also learn to redo their diet as well and cut back on sugar intake. More consequences: it destroys relationships. Anger keeps people away. Nobody likes to run around with somebody who's angry all the time, right? As I said, it's a principality of destruction. And one of the verses we pointed out is it slowly works. At last it bites like a serpent. My hope is that people pray about and consider abstaining 100% from alcohol. There's nothing good in it. My pastor used to say, I've never seen it put a marriage back together. The problems increase. So let's go to the bar and have a beer. And pretty soon they're in a big fight, right? It never brings peace. It always expounds further. There's some other patterns that come along, especially once alcoholic rage takes effect. Anxiety. The victims, the spouse, the kids that are living with the alcoholic or the alcoholic. Anxiety can be a fearful anger. Anger mixed with fear. The fear of losing control, the fear of becoming angry and situations coming up, and the person feels like their life is just coming apart. The physical effects of anxiety is irregular heartbeats, chills, sweats, stomach problems, headaches, neck pains, muscle cramps. These are all things that come upon both the alcoholic, and his rage and violence creates the same effects in the people that live with. Depression. Seems like wherever there's anxiety, there's depression. Depression can be very painful, very crippling. It destroys the ability to function, and it robs every semblance of happiness. Quite often when I start praying and working for an alcoholic, by the way, let me say, there's a difference between being a drunk and an alcoholic. An alcoholic is someone who just drinks once in a while. A drunk is someone who gets plastered drunk, and they're that way every weekend or quite often. And you can be an alcoholic and not a drunk. Many people that, once these spirits have come in, they cannot even sip a little bit because they just flow into full manifestation. And others, it seems to come more slowly. And the demons are taking their time because they know that you still have a brain and a will, and you may stop them. And so they like to proceed little by little so you don't know it's increasing. And pretty soon you're drinking more and more and more. And then all these other things come in. Depression. And that often turns to anger upon self. Alcoholics also need to deal with the whole package of depression, which, by the way, we have a series on that too. Self-hatred, self-punishment, more destruction. Another pattern is guilt, overeating, self-starvation, and sometimes people turn to these things to handle anger. They will turn to the things because they're angry. Anger turned inward. They may beat themselves up more. They may eat more, feel more guilty, hatred of self because of that. Starvation, sometimes this form of self-hate, so they can go one direction or the other. Another pattern in the alcoholic household is no sleep or deep sleep. Sometimes sleep is an escape mechanism. It's amazing how some people can sleep for 10 hours a night, every night, and they never get anything accomplished with their life because they don't regulate their sleep, especially during the working years when you have to build and develop things. You may have to cut back on some of your sleep. There's times when I had to work 2 jobs to do things, and I had to cut back on sleep in order to develop and build something. Sooner or later, though, it's going to catch up with you. And it's very difficult, for example, to sleep when a person's full of anger or you're the victim of anger. Their mind is always agitated, and it prevents sleep. And sleep is necessary for the rebuilding of your body and the cells in your body. And it's a time when you should be able to be at peace with yourself and with others. But restlessness, fear, worry, million thoughts running through your head makes it impossible to sleep. Another pattern is always thinking of the past, worry, weird thoughts. When you're the victim of anger, it's confusing to your brain. You may want to pick up the booklet on confusion. When things are presented to you that are not true, the brain takes it as confusing. It's like, what did I do? You probably didn't do anything. It was the guy that did the drinking. That's his problem. But why are they mad at me? What have I done? Probably nothing. You don't need to do anything. So you begin this cyclic thinking of, what did I do wrong? What could I do right? How do I turn this around? And the mind never rests. You develop troubled thoughts, an unsound mind, anxiety of mind. By the way, if you see yourself with all of these patterns, maybe the king man over all of this that you should deal with is alcohol spirits or drug spirits from your family lineage. Even though you say, well, I don't drink, I don't touch the stuff, never have, I haven't my entire life, but you inherited this pattern from your alcoholic father, grandfather, great-grandfather, or grandmother, whoever it might be. Self-sabotage, another pattern tied in with self-hatred. An automatic failure mechanism steps into place, the type of destruction spirit on the alcoholic. And of course, the wife and the kids also, they get the effects of the destruction of the husband. And so anger, frustration, self-hating, and you start all over again, shame for failures of the past. And so many people get caught in this cycle. Another pattern is the speaking and not speaking. You know, one of the messages that we had done in the past was the alcoholic family personalities. If this hits home with you, if you're listening in today, order our series on alcohol where we go into this. And you maybe aren't the drinker, the husband may be the drinker, but every person in the family has a position, like the rescuer, usually the firstborn kid, the scapegoat, it's always their fault, the family clown, the lost middle child, that's the withdrawn one. So there's many personalities or areas of demons that the family of an alcoholic have, and the door opens to this. And one of the patterns that we see when you're living with somebody who's verbally abusive out of rage is that you get to the point where you quit talking, you quit speaking, you lose your voice, you lose your self-image of who you are, and you walk around on eggshells. So any ladies out there married to an alcoholic, you need to get your voice back. Order that CD. We have that one too, How to Get Your Voice Restored. And you have to get a lot of deliverance on all the fears, because the alcoholic with his rage controls you. You become fearful because of the violence and the abuse. So you lose your voice. You'll have to get your voice back if you're going to get your own life back. And by the way, just because your alcoholic husband doesn't want to change or get their life back, you can still go forward, get your life back, get your voice back. And there may be times you're going to have to start speaking up for yourself. Other patterns with the alcoholic rage is hurtful communication. They become masters of words used to hurt or discredit. One of their favorite tools is importance. The issues of importance and recognition is upon them, but they never give that out to their spouse or kids. Blasting, the verbal communication, this whole area, when anger is really settled in, becomes a part of the person, the alcoholic rage. Actually, they become dead inside. They don't feel anymore, and their anger just constantly explodes. And so they just blast out in cruel, cutting remarks, and so on. Some more evil spirits that come in with the alcoholic pattern: arrested development, pouting, self-pity, mockery. They will mock God. Remember Proverbs 20, verse 1 again, wine is a mocker. People of God, anything about going to church, the alcoholic just mocks it, makes fun of. Strong drink is raging. Whoever is deceived, so there brings in a deception. I don't have a problem with this. and quit whenever I want. Well, you can quit, but that doesn't get rid of the demons that came in while you were drinking. Thereby is not wise. They literally become brutish in their thinking, and they lose the ability to intellectually think and to be able to, where you can look and consider and make decisions based on things that you're seeing. Jealousy is the rage of a man, Proverbs 6:34. Shame, grievous words. Proverbs 15:1 shows a soft answer turneth away wrath. Grievous words stir up anger. Control, impatience, hasty, foolishness that comes with the Arrested Development. Ecclesiastes 7:9 says, be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. Now, so many people says, oh, I quit drinking. God instantly delivered me. Instantly delivered you of what? Pin them down. Ask them how their life is different. Well, I don't drink anymore. I said, well, that's good. We're proud of that. That's a good first step. But that doesn't change you. It's like leaving the barn door open and all the beasts of the field come in and you decide, gee, I better shut the door. You open the door to your house and snakes and frogs and toads and flies and all that comes in. And you say, well, I shut the door. Okay, the door's shut. I'm not drinking anymore. But all that stuff that's inside needs to be cast out. And that is going to take you some time because these things root into your being, your characteristics. The alcoholic spends money like an alcoholic. Even if he's not drinking, he thinks like one, acts like one. And so all of these things need to be, you have to go through scripture and learn the correct way to how are you supposed to act and live. You may have to completely retrain yourself, and it's not going to happen in 3 easy prayer sessions because each and every one of those areas will require a lot of deliverance. You may get prayer numerous times just on anger alone. We've had guys come in, and that's what's just their major thing of life. They're angry all the time. I didn't think about it. They just come to church, get in prayer every service. A year later, one of them got up and gave a testimony, and he said, you know what? I'm not as angry as I used to be. But it was a better part of a year where he could look, and even his wife said, yeah, he just doesn't flip out over every little thing that comes along. Car gets a flat tire, so you kick the car and break the windshield. And living with alcoholic rage, to the one living with the angry, abusive person, a few thoughts. Don't take it personal. Realize that it's not your problem, it's their problems. So don't blame yourself. I know they will tell you you're the reason I drink, but that doesn't really work. You have to choose what you won't put up with. For some people, separation may be needed. I will say you don't need to stay in a place where you're continually being abused.
Folks, I hope you are enjoying the show today. To unlock the rest of the show for uninterrupted commercial-free shows, simply become one of my patrons today. Go to www.patreon.com/SHEILA ZILINSKY. Thank you for your support.